Welcome to M Go Bucks. It's showtime. How are you guys doing? Please like and subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate it. If you're just as big of a junkie on Ohio State and Michigan football as we are, please subscribe to the channel and join us. Grab a tasty beverage. Get comfortable because I think we're just going to have an awesome time trying to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Less than 24 hours away. How are you guys doing? Matt and Brian.
Even if you're a Terps fan also.
Yeah, exactly.
Terp fans we have for Diego.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a college football fan, I think you're going crazy right now. A lot of these bowl games have been fun, and I can't wait. I mean, there's no reason to think that these semifinal games shouldn't be good ones too.
Straight out the shoot, I had a question for Brian. So, Big Ten is 3-0. SEC is, I think, 1-4, almost 0-5 because the triple overtime miracle for our. Are you think that maybe this is like the worst year for the SEC in at least a decade?
I don't think there's any question, and I would have thought that even before the bowl games, just because based on what we saw this year. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, Alabama clearly had what is a down year for them. And they're still a really good team, obviously. But the rest of that conference, you had Georgia that didn't have to play Alabama. They played a pretty soft schedule, and the rest of that conference. I mean, I don't think this was a particularly good Tennessee team. I don't think this was a particularly good complete team. I think their offense was a lot of fun to watch. But we know their defense had deficiencies, and that team was ranked number 1 in the country for a minute. And then you had LSU that was all over the place this year. I mean, are they the third best team in that conference? It's crazy. Like top to bottom, there were so many teams that disappointed this year. Texas A&M wasn't any good. Ole Miss wasn't any good. Florida wasn't any good. Like there were just a lot of teams. I don't think that conference was nearly as good top to bottom as other conferences in the country this year, no doubt. And the Bulls are just proving that out.
I think the other thing that you forgot to mention was the fact that Vandy won a couple games in the SEC. That alone will tell you that the SEC.
Right?
Yeah, Vandy, exactly. Awesome. So how you guys have to be excited about tomorrow, right? I mean, we're getting the primetime game, Ohio State versus Georgia, which is really the best game of the day. I think everyone's biggest question right now is, are we going to see a rematch for Michigan and Ohio State in the national championship game? And I have to say, like, as much as I don't want to actually see that, I think it would be awesome if it actually happened. The other my brain says this would be awesome if it happened. Think of the week leading up to that. It would just be mayhem around everywhere around Michigan and Ohio. Crazy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I can't even. It's still, like ever since we were, we did the playoffs, it still has to play stuff that can't believe it's tomorrow. It's finally here. I'm so excited to actually have another game.
So, Brian.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, Matt.
Brian, so we talked earlier this week, and I know, at least in my mind, I've kind of been going a certain way towards kind of being negative towards the Buckeyes' chances, and it flip-flops in my mind a little bit. Like, so what has your thought process been throughout, like, this whole time? It's been like a month since the Michigan-Ohio State game. Like, what's your emotional roller coaster kind of been like right now? Where are you right now on the Buckeyes?
I'm as high as I've been maybe all year going into this game, which I'm so happy because I felt like my dog died, after the Michigan game. It was so bad. It was so negative. And then you had, the ending of the recruiting cycle that didn't quite go the way everybody wanted. It seemed like everybody was just so negative about the program and where things were. And as we've gotten closer to this game, I just feel better and better. I mean, you don't want to read too much into press conferences and that kind of stuff, but I love what I'm hearing out of the coaches when they talk about how happy they are about bowl prep, what you're hearing about from these players. I mean, I think there's genuine confidence that not only can they compete, but they can win this game. Obviously, a lot of things have to go right, and we've talked about that, but I mean, just as far as confidence going in, I feel more confident right now with Ohio State playing Georgia than I did in 2014 with Ohio State playing Alabama. So, I feel as good as I could feel as a fan about where the state of this program. I'm really excited. I'm not going to sleep very well tonight. I'm ready to go. Tomorrow's going to be a long day.
Matt, how are you feeling?
Well, why don't we get to a few of the statements here before we? Can you read that? I can't see.
Yeah,
it.
sure. Yeah, Antoine saying with NIL and people transferring, the talent is being distributed across the college football. It's only so many 5 stars these teams can hold hostage. Just stand under the NIL and transfer Christmas tree.
No question. I mean, look at how tight these games are across the board.
Yeah.
These games, it shows you that there is no question that college football is different, at least for this year. And there's no reason to think that this won't be more like the new normal, where we have more even distribution of talent. Although, Alabama went out and just signed an unbelievable recruiting class as they normally do, even in the NIL era. But it's fun to watch. I mean, there were really good programs all over the country. The same thing we talked about in the last show, Nate, we talked about Michigan and TCU. When you can make an argument the Big 12 was the best conference in the country top to bottom this year. And who would have thought that going into the season?
Yeah.
With all the ranked teams, yeah.
One of the things I was going to say, too, I think the NIL hasn't really taken effect yet, and it's not as big of an impact right now as another thing that I was thinking about, and that is everyone being able to come back for an extra year because of the COVID rules. So you have a lot of these smaller teams that don't normally make noise, and they're able to compete with some of the bigger schools because they have. It reminds me of some of the above average Ohio State basketball teams where occasionally you would just get guys like Aaron Kraft who just stick around for 10 years, and the team really good. You have guys that they're not quite good enough to make it in the next level, but if they can get an extra year and just play forever in college, then your teams are doing well, and so you have a lot more upsets, I think, with the smaller teams because of the COVID giving eligibility
and the portal. I mean, the portal, as much as NIL right now, NIL helped Texas A&M land that recruiting class. That didn't do squat for them this year. But that portal, you look at guys like Michael Penix, Bo Nix, there's guys all over that have made huge impacts. What Jamison Williams obviously did for Alabama last year. I mean, it's the portal, I think, has changed everything. The way Michigan's making up for recruiting high school players with bringing in established collegiate players. They're almost treating their roster management more with free agency than they are with the draft, if you think about it in NFL terms. So, there's a lot. It's a wild time because it gives these programs different ways of building their roster, and without any kind of penalty for transfer. And obviously USC and Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman at a completely different university. So, I think the portal's made the portal era has absolutely changed college football.
Yeah, it has, and it's a good point about Michigan because I'm pretty excited about their portal. Like right now, they're getting guys that they've seen play in college, like at a high level in college, where of course everyone knows high schoolers, we don't know how they're going to perform. So, real excited about the offensive line for next year. I think we've got a lot of promise there, and we might just kind of keep up where we are going from now on.
Linebackers too. I mean, the nice thing is they've identified places where they have holes, and they've done a good job of plugging them.
What I was
obviously,
I was wondering if going forward, like after you see a few of the disasters, like all the amount of money that was spent on the A&M class, where I know they've lost a lot of people into the portal. I don't know how many of them were from the class last year that they bought. I know some of them were from that class, but I don't know how many of them were from that class. But I'm wondering if after a year or two, if no new rules are implemented, if we're going to see, more of like an investment of the money going towards the portal. So, like if someone has played or two or even three, and I could actually see that these guys are players, not just a high school talent that might be good. That seems like it's just like a way riskier way to spend your money on a recruit coming out of high school, even if you're a 5-star, versus someone who's proven it and made it in college.
Yeah,
no question. Yeah, no question. I think part of that too is, if you look at these teams that are typically, when you look back at the teams that are playing for national championships year in and year out, i.e. Georgia, Alabama, it's typically the third year in the program that you really see kids take off. And so even if you load up, even if Texas A&M had the greatest class in the history of recruiting, it was going to take that class 2 or 3 years to really show on the field. And what you need to do is stack class after class after class. And if you're not going to be able to compete for the highest in talent in the coming out of the high school ranks, then go hard after the portal. And we've seen programs do that. The best teams don't have to go and bring in a ton of guys, but they can certainly cherry pick. Even in a down year, where would Alabama have been without Jahmyr Gibbs this year? I mean, he was their best player on offense outside of Bryce Young, and he came in the portal. The year before that, it was Jamison Williams. It's
who would Bryce Young have even thrown to here if Gibbs wasn't there? He was the target.
Yeah, I mean that was wild. But even like, so when you look at this matchup with Georgia, Georgia didn't even have to play a down Alabama this year. So, their best games were obviously they beat Tennessee, and I think didn't they play LSU this year? I can't remember. They smoked them down in Baton Rouge, and that was a big win. But again, like I don't think. No, I'm sorry, I'm getting all confused. That was Tennessee that went down there and beat them. They beat them in the SEC championship game. But yeah, I mean it's one of those deals where I think we all know that Georgia's extremely talented. Georgia's probably the best team in the country, but I think they still have a lot to prove too. And there's no question. I think this Ohio State team is the best team they will have faced this year. And I can't wait to see it. And if they end up beating Ohio State, they're going to play Michigan, who arguably would be the best team that they would have played this year. So the two best teams that they will have played this year are in front of them. Either way you slice it, because of the way that the playoff fell.
I'm really starting to doubt the Georgia in general, especially their offense. Like, I mean, they played two. Like I think we were texting earlier. They had played two decent defenses all year in Kentucky and Missouri, and neither team they could move the ball at all. I mean, and Georgia hasn't played anyone to the same caliber as Ohio State, who has played 6 top 25 defenses. So we haven't had too many great teams overall that we played other than Penn State and Michigan, but we played 2 top 5 defenses and 6 top 25 defenses. And Georgia played 2 top 25 defenses and they could barely move the ball. So and they don't have like the type of players outside of ours who, we did a good job covering the tight end at Notre Dame. Granted they have 2 awesome tight ends, but I mean, I just don't see their offense is not something that should be a problem. They don't have a superstar running back who's going to be able to break off 80-yard runs. So, it's just there's doesn't seem like there's anything on offense out a mobile quarterback that we have to worry about.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sell them completely short. I do think they are a dangerous offense in that they can be more balanced than Michigan is. They're not the running attack that Michigan had, and I don't think they have the offensive line that Michigan has, but they're very good. And Stetson Bennett is a really good quarterback. Like, he's a veteran dude, and I love what they can do personnel-wise because they keep those 2 tight ends in so much. So even though they can give you – they can get you in base defense, and then somebody's got to end up guarding Bowers, in pass coverage, and he's just a mismatch problem. They're getting one of their better wide receivers back for this game that's missed basically the entire year. But they're banged up too, and there's some questions about some guys. I think one of the wide receivers is hurt, and then one of their offensive tackles is pretty banged up too. So there's a lot of really interesting matchups when Ohio State's defense is out there. I will say, from my standpoint, with Ohio State's defense, I don't think they're quite as good as maybe their rankings and statistics showed this year. I think they're miles better than they were last year. But I don't think, I mean, they have some elite talent in certain spots, but that you can get Ohio State's defense too. And we all know that. And that's what we said in the lead up to the Michigan game. The question was, could Michigan do the one thing that Ohio State has allowed everybody to do, and that's throw the ball deep on them in one-on-one situations. I see that burning Ohio State at least 2 or 3 times in this game, at least.
You know, and it was interesting because I didn't realize until I started watching the Heisman ceremony that Stetson Bennett actually has a few more passing yards than C.J. Stroud. I didn't know that they were that prolific of a passing team. He doesn't have the touchdown numbers, but they obviously have production there.
They do, but it's not consistent. So what they do a lot of is you'll see a bunch of shorter throws that you miss a tackle and it goes for big yards. And that was one of the criticisms of, I think, Bennett through the year was he was putting up numbers, but they weren't necessarily downfield shots. Now, not to say that he couldn't do it, because he had some big shots down the field. That Tennessee game, he had one right out of the gate and kind of took that and a running touchdown kind of took the wind out of Tennessee right away. And so, I don't think that he's as consistent a downfield passer, but he can make things happen. And the biggest thing with him is his ability to extend plays and he can scramble too. So, and that's not that any defense is going to be great against that, but Ohio State has given up some yards and some plays to mobile quarterbacks this year too. So
do you think that our strategy is going to be to try to get after him, or just sort of play rush up the field to try to play safe and make sure he doesn't escape the pocket?
Jim Knowles is not going. He's going to blitz in this game. Like, he's going to bring pressure. It's not all the time, but he's an aggressive dude. Like, you don't play cover zero as much as they did in the biggest game of your tenure at Ohio State. If you're not a gutsy dude, he didn't come here to play, cover two the whole game against when you got nothing to lose, when they're literally playing with nothing to lose in this game. Now, I think you do need to see whether your especially your front four can get pressure without having to bring additional rushers. But I expect a good mix of things from Knowles. I think he's gonna empty his gun in this game for sure.
Yeah, our linebackers have been good at getting pressure too this year.
Oh yeah, I mean they do a lot of the mixed fronts, especially if you can get teams in third and 7 or more. They love to mix those fronts up, whether they're gonna bring simulated pressures in the A gaps or bring both, or bring sometimes 3 people, but they'll do the mug front kind of look where they will take the 4 down linemen and split them out and put both linebackers right up in the A gap. And, that's when Knowles is at his best. But, I think there will be times when Ohio State's defensive line can really impact the game, if not dominate the game. But it's still going to come down to and the linebackers are solid. I mean, Tommy Eichenberg's, he's as good as it gets as far as tackling. I do worry about the back end. I'm still a little PTSD from the Michigan game.
So, question on this. So, what do you think is going to be the key to Ohio State winning that game against Georgia? Do you think I'm sure it's going to be a number of things, but what are you most optimistic about? Because I know, like, as time gets a little closer, even I'm slightly more optimistic than I was yesterday about the Buckeyes' chances. So what do you think? What are you most optimistic about? What do you think the Buckeyes are going to be able to do against this team?
I mean, for me,
Matt,
go for it.
I think the defense is. I definitely agree with you. I had PTSD for a while after the Michigan, but it's just different personnel. I mean, I'm assuming we're up with plays at the tight end, that's fine. But as long as we can control the offense in general, which I think we will, I think the defense is going to do a really good job of shutting it down, and Georgia's going to have a real tough time moving the ball. My only real concern, I guess, is like Brian had mentioned, one of their receivers who was out, and he came back during the SEC. I think for the last time he played was in the Oregon game. He got hurt after that, and then he came back and played a little bit in the SEC championship game. Didn't play much, but he's had a month off, so we don't really know what his status is going to be. But then one of the other receivers, McConkey, we don't know what that says either. He's still a little banged up, so once again, a lot of it's going to come down to health. Like we don't know what the health is of a lot of those receivers on Georgia, and then Ohio State. We don't know what we're going to. Ryan Williams. We don't know if Matt Jones is going to be 80%, 90%. We have no idea if he's going to be able to hold up because even at 100%, they're going to need to double and triple team Jalen Carter or roll out or do quick passes or just do something to get them, to get that guy worn down or something because he's just an absolute beast. And then, but yeah, as far as just being excited about something, it's just the defense. I'm less concerned than I was initially about their offense. And I'm more excited about our defense and how we match up well against them for the most part. Obviously, we're not going to be going down or anything, but I think we do a good enough job to win.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Matt's point. I especially if Tyleik Williams and Michael Hall Jr. play a decent amount of snaps, I think the base, like your best 5 or 6 defensive linemen for Ohio State can do some things against Georgia's offensive line. I think the linebackers can play well in this game. So I agree. I think the defense could play one of their better games. The offensively, Georgia doesn't really rush the passer very well, especially from the perimeter with 4 guys. So, and we've got 2 really good tackles. We've got one that's probably going to be the first tackle taken in the draft. And Paris Johnson Jr. And so, outside of blitzes, edge pressure should not be the problem. So, if Matt Jones is healthy enough and Whippler and Donovan Jackson can do a decent job holding up on the interior, if CJ Stroud has time, he can carve you up. He's shown that. Even though Georgia has a really, really good secondary, they've given up yards to receivers in against decent offenses all season long. And there's no reason to think that Marvin Harrison Jr. and Egbuka and can't get some yards. I tend to think the guy that may unlock quite a bit of things for them is Cade Stover, as really the number 3 receiver in this offense. And to me, if CJ can get comfortable early in the game, it could be a fun game to watch. I think he's got so many doubters, so much to prove, so much riding on it that if he can rise to the moment or bring the moment down to him and play well, Ohio State is super dangerous. Super dangerous.
Yeah, it just depends on the mindset of CJ Stroud right now. Like, is he like, does he have one foot in the NFL? Some of his comments lately have been a little concerning in the sense that it doesn't sound like he's not super excited about this game. Maybe that's just his personality, his outward personality. Yeah. But I mean, I still think he's going to go out there and throw the ball for 400 yards, probably. Or maybe, mid 300s. But it's just interesting, though.
I think a lot gets made of comments when the guy, he's not Stetson Bennett. He's not JT Barrett. That's just not his personality. I don't care what he says in the press conferences. I just need to see it on the field. I need to see him take the first run when there's an opportunity to get a first down. Just go get it. And if it means going through a tackle, let's see it. If it means pulling on his own read, if it means, putting your body on the line, it's time to show it. And I think he's got that in him. I just think the one problem I have with, the couple things I have problems with CJ are, and I think we've talked about this before, that to me, it seems like he does so much preparation that he almost kind of overanalyzes sometimes. in plays, and you can see him just holding, trying to wait for the perfect opportunity when sometimes it's just good enough, let it go. And the other one is just sometimes when the play breaks down, you just got to go get some yards. Like just go get the yards. He will try to wait and try to break it to throw downfield for a really big play when sometimes 7 yards is all you need, 4 yards is all you need. And that's what has to happen in this game, because the games that the teams that have been the most successful against Georgia have kept the ball. They played ball control to some degree. And that's really a big part of this. I mean, Ohio State's got the quick strike firepower, but they've not really been great at sustaining drives. And this would be a really good game to have some sustained drives.
Right. So I was going to ask if you think that I'm really curious to see what, for me, like the biggest question mark is going to be what we're going to do on offense as far as running the ball. I mean, obviously you were touching on whether CJ is going to run when there's running lanes available to him. I'm wondering more so even than that, are they going to actually have any plays for him? Or is it going to be runs where like designed for him or because a lot of times you have the option to run on a play and he never does it. Are they going to legitimately have those plays and he is going to take it sometimes, or is and are we going to try anything different with the run game? Because no on Georgia, are we just going to just sort of only run when I don't know, like when they're just sort of like how Purdue sometimes does, is passing team that keep you on. We're going to actually commit to the run. It's like Ryan Day is a much better coach when he doesn't get the run game.
Right.
He has a good running back.
The one thing I tend to look at this year was, I mean, I don't think anybody really stopped their running attack. They kind of stopped themselves in games by not running enough, but no one stopped them. I mean, starting with the Notre Dame game all the way through, even the Michigan game, they were running for a high clip, even with Chip Trayanum in there. So I'm not saying that they're going to run like that on Georgia. Certainly not in between the tackles, but I think you have to show a willingness to run the ball. And one thing I think you will see is you'll see Emeka Egbuka and Xavier Johnson on some jet. I think you're going to get some jet motion handoffs for sure, especially if they the screen game has not been there for Ohio State all year, and that is a really big part of their offense. So hopefully they got some of that blocking cleaned up in the last month, but because I do think you can get some yards against Georgia in the perimeter screen game, but usually those are tagged to it's kind of an RPO, so it's part of the run game and it's just about counting the defenders. So that's a big part of it. As far as CJ running, the time that I'd like to see them maybe have an actual called run is literally like a quarterback draw on 3rd and 7. Something where they just nobody expects him to run, and you just call a quarterback run, but not necessarily. I don't think they're going to call, on first down in the middle of the field. They're not going to call a CJ Stroud run like quarterback power. There are better options out there to try to run the ball.
No, I didn't mean power. I meant like when it's run pass or run, you're going to hand it off to the running back depending on what the defense does.
Oh yeah, no, the read option I think will definitely be part of the game plan, and especially in the red zone, you almost have to.
Never keeps it on the.
No, he never keeps it, and that's part of that's just him. Like he's done it a couple of times, but not nearly enough, and that's one of the things. He's just he's just not a great read option player. But Nate, you said a few times you think he's got 1 foot in the NFL. I'll tell you right now, if he doesn't play well in this game, his draft stock is going to continue to drop, because I don't care how pretty a ball you throw, you got to be a competitor to play that position in the NFL. You look at the guys who are the best players that they're not always necessarily the greatest passers or the most accurate, surgical passers. They're just tough sons of bitches who will lead the team and make a play when you have to make it. And there's different ways to do it. There's all different types of quarterbacks in the NFL, but all of them are, you could argue are some of the most competitive guys on their teams. And CJ's got to show that, or, he's going to be just another guy who could throw a pretty ball. And to some degree, I think that's what happened with Dwayne Haskins. And I'm not trying to say that they'll have same trajectories, but, that was kind of the knock on Haskins when he went into the NFL. The guy could throw an unbelievable ball. Nobody ever questioned that. But there were a whole bunch of other things that were never going to let him get to the next level. Now, I think CJ is more dedicated to the game and the sport and where he wants to go as a quarterback than Haskins was. He just hasn't really shown that yet on the field. Now, I think he's had moments. I mean, I think people say, he's never shown up in a big game. That's not true. I mean, I've never seen anybody play better than he played in the second half of that Utah game. Now, yeah, granted, they had some real significant challenges with their personnel in the secondary in that game, but he was dropping absolute dimes in that game. And he showed that if he has time, he is lethal, absolutely lethal. And, here there's a great opportunity. He's, if these receivers win some one-on-ones, if he's aggressive, like they could really do something in this game.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like, CJ, so I'm a Michigan fan. I'm from Michigan too. So I'm a Detroit Lions guy now too. So I am not like there's been some projections for CJ Stroud to go to the Lions, and I am so not interested in that. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone else like on the show and in the comments that are Lions fans. Does anyone want to see CJ Stroud be their quarterback in the NFL? Like, probably not. He's just doesn't seem like he has what it takes. But one thing I think is key in this Georgia game that I keep coming back to, I feel like Ohio State has to stay out of the red zone. Like I feel like they've at least they've got to take some shots. Like they've got to stay out of the red zone.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry to cough. But yeah, it's crazy. Like with Michigan, they've got the same red zone problems, but they stayed out against Ohio State 5 times for huge plays. Mm-hmm. That was a huge part of their win. And I think Ohio State needs to do the same against Georgia here.
I would say is our red zone had been pretty good most of the year.
Oh, hey, by the way, Matt, speak up.
What?
We're hearing we can't hear you. Speak up. Be louder.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that. I just think that what was I thinking about? I lost my train of thought.
They were pretty good in the red zone this year.
Yeah, so they obviously they were terrible against Michigan, but your red zone efficiency is going to go way down if you don't throw to Marvin Harrison one time in like 20 opportunities that they had or whatever it was. I mean, you throw the ball to Marvin Harrison over and over, especially when there's single coverage, just automatically. I don't care what the play call is. If he ever gets single coverage, just throw to him, number one. And then just keep running the ball, especially when you're, that's one thing I really get annoyed with Ryan Day about is when we get plays that work, he doesn't just keep going back to it. He'll just run it once and then he won't run it again the rest of the game. Like we had a bunch of runs at the start of the game against Michigan and we never came.
Yeah, there was some really rough red zone play calling in that Michigan game. No question about it. I think we did some things to really put ourselves in a bind. And then there were obviously some penalties and things like that. And that was the thing I said to Nate earlier in the week is my one wish is I just want to see a cleaner game. It's the thing I keep thinking about too, guys, in both of these games is in these big finals games, semifinals and final championship game, refs hardly ever call holding. Hardly ever. So, that is going to be really interesting to see who's getting an advantage at the line of scrimmage with some of that. But I mean, you just hardly. It's got to be absolutely blatant to get a holding call. So I want to see Ohio State's offensive line against Georgia's defensive line. I think that is something I'll be watching really, really closely from the jump. Both lines of scrimmage. I mean, that's the way I like to watch football anyway, is the first couple of drives. I really like to watch especially the interior offensive line, just to see how that's going. And, the thing that I like about, depending on the way the game goes, I think you can run the ball on Georgia, but you may not have much success early on. Same thing we talked a lot about Ohio State. I think the Michigan game is interesting too, because TCU has a funky defensive scheme that may take a while for Michigan to kind of figure it out. And I think there is a way that, if things go perfectly for TCU, if their offense can explode early, and it takes a minute for Michigan to figure out how to get TCU's defensive front moving, then that's got to be their only way to beat Michigan. Because if it stays close, Michigan's eventually just going to grind on them. And kind of the same thing with Georgia. That's kind of what Georgia does to teams. They kind of just grind them down with their run game. Because I agree with you, Matt. This is not a dominant run game where you've got some freaky running back there that you're worried about going for 250 against you. They do it different ways, but they can definitely run on you when it matters. And when they've seen, even in these games where it's been close, when it gets late in the game, Georgia's able to grind out those first downs and just take the life out of you. And we certainly saw that Ohio State's offense kind of hung their defense out to dry against Michigan, and they just got worn down. And that's Michigan's MO. So, that's kind of the tale. Even just watching how the halves unfold in these games is going to be fascinating.
And we had about TJ making that the focus of. I wasn't saying that we should make him the focus of the offense. I'm just saying, and Brian was saying, when he has 5 easy yards to pick up, he needs to pick up the 5 yards and get out of bounds. And, it wouldn't hurt to take an option every once in a while just to keep the team on, the defense honest. I mean, it's going to open up so many things. If they know that they don't ever have to account for the quarterback run, then it just makes their job way easier. Why should we play with one hand tied behind our back when we don't have to?
Well, you know what? You know what? Like, CJ can try and run in this game, that's fine. But if you're going to start running as a quarterback, if CJ's going to say, hey, I think I want to run every once in a while, doing it against Georgia is probably not the game that you probably want that to happen in. So, you're probably right. I could still see him doing it occasionally.
He's rolling out of the pocket and there's 5 yards and he can run 5 yards and then run out of bounds. I'm not even saying to even have to don't take a hit. Just like get the 5 yards. There's so many times where he has 10, 15 yards in front of him. He won't take it.
Yeah, very true. And you know what? I keep saying that that the Buckeyes need to throw into the end zone too, because I think I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, Georgia is actually the number one defense in the red zone, like avoiding points. So that's just another reason why you want to actually be throwing into the end zone rather than getting 10 yards in. You'll end up with field goals.
So let's talk about Michigan a little bit. We haven't really talked about Michigan. So what do you think? Are you guys completely over TCU like everyone else it seems to be?
I don't know what to expect. Part of me, like what Brian was saying, is like they do have a funky defense. It's a 3-3-5 defense, so it could actually take some time before Michigan can figure that out. But I ultimately think the offensive line is going to just kind of hunker down and win the game for them. And Edwards is going to start running. I'm pretty confident in that. I'm a little more concerned about defending TCU than I am scoring points on TCU. Do you agree, Brian? You back with us?
Yeah, I'm here. No, I agree. I mean, I think they're explosive. Quentin Johnston Like we talked about earlier in the week, I think he's the best. He might be the best wide receiver in the country. Certainly, he's right behind Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's explosive, and he's a problem. But they have other dudes too. This is one of the fastest teams in the country, like top to bottom speed. They have speed. And it's on both sides of the ball, and they've played a bunch of competitive games. So, they're pretty battle tested. I don't think they're going to be overly intimidated. It's just a huge question of which style of game does this fall under, and if it falls into Michigan's style, eventually, as long as it's low scoring and close, that doesn't bode well for TCU in the second half, because Michigan's done a phenomenal job in the second half of these games. Especially their defense has just locked teams down in the second half. So it's a massive ask, I think, for TCU to win, but I do think that they're capable of it. You just got to get Michigan out of their style of game. You got to put the ball in McCarthy's hands and make him throw the ball more than he wants to, because even in the Ohio State game, yes, they hit the big plays. You cannot take that away from them. I give him a ton of credit, but he was not consistent throwing the ball downfield in that game at all. So, I still maintain that the pass interference penalty was such a big momentum swing on that longer drive, because they only put one drive together on Ohio State. Now, TCU's defense is not as good as Ohio State's. Yeah, well, the long one was the killer, where McCarthy got the touchdown, the rushing touchdown. But that was the one where I do think there is a formula, but it's got to go pretty much perfectly for TCU to win that game. And,
it does.
And if it doesn't, then Michigan should be able to grind on them. I don't like the fact that a lot of this is falling on Donovan Edwards' shoulders, though, because Quorum's done, and if Edwards gets hurt, they don't have anywhere near the skill level in their third and fourth string running backs, I don't think, as they have in Edwards. Edwards is pretty special. So
they had to transfer over a linebacker as running back, kind of a Chip Tatum situation. And he's all right. He's a pretty good guy, pretty good at running. He's kind of bigger, but they really have. And I know you were talking about that Buckeye, Michigan-Ohio State game. Like I that was a big momentum swing, the PI, but I think the biggest one, in my opinion, came after that. Before the Edwards running touchdowns, was the one where Stroud threw that third down, and it went to, who's the tight end? Stover, yeah, and our DB knocked the ball out.
Oh yeah, no, saving the touchdown was the touchdown was huge.
That to me was like the play of the game, and the one, because that would have brought Ohio State back within 4. Yeah, and
no doubt about it. It was, and that's where like the play of Michigan's secondary. Obviously, the big plays, the explosive plays in the pass game were a surprise, but the other surprise to me was just how good Michigan's secondary played in that game. And this is going to be a big test for them, because Duggan and those wide receivers are really fast and really good. And they've come back in games. Yeah, the running back's really good. They've got skill, and they've been down big in some games and come back and won them. So, it's going to be hard to put them away. But certainly, I think the game plan for Michigan is take the ball, keep the ball, and keep that TCU offense off the field. I can kind of see it going one of two ways. Either TCU kind of gives them some problems early on with their scheme, or it's going to be like UC Alabama last year, because UC kind of came in with that same type of undersized 3-man front against Alabama, and Alabama just road graded them from the very beginning.
Right. Yeah, I think that I don't think UC had the type of offense though that TCU does.
They do not.
Granted, they beat Texas, but I just don't think that Texas has a very good defense, obviously. And so it's a little different. And I know Kansas State, that was just a scoring marathon. But it is interesting how this is all going to turn out, because I think Michigan's going to win the game. But I am scared of the offense. I'm scared of Duggan. He was up there, the Heisman Trophy, for a reason.
Yeah, what I was going to say about TCU, like they're a different offense. So Ohio State has, I would say, overall better receivers than they do, but their receivers are not receivers. They're speed guys. So we actually don't have any. None of our starting receivers are, like Devin Smith's speed burner.
No, not at all.
That's what TCU has. So just because you're good at covering, routes doesn't mean you're going to be able to keep up with the speed guys. And so
they have excellent coaches too. I mean, you got Lincoln Riley's brother is the offensive coordinator there with Sonny Dykes, who's an offensive, guru from, all the way back to like Texas high school football days. And, they're going to have some interesting schemes that are different that Michigan hasn't really seen from anybody in the Big Ten this year. And then defensively, they're a little funky too. So it's going to be fun. I mean, they definitely, the styles couldn't contrast more in that first game. They really couldn't.
Very true. And you know what?
Run defense.
Yeah, Antoine, Michigan by 21. Andrew says 52-3. I don't think it's going to be that big of a game. But
that's a homer
one
pick
thing,
right
those
there.
big plays, as you guys know, those big plays are killer. Like Ohio State was just kind of like controlling the game for a little while, and then boom, boom, they're losing. So we just can't let that happen.
Yeah, no, I agree, Nate. I think it's really about Michigan imposing their will not only on the opponent but on the style of the game. And if they can play the way they want to, TCU can't match them physically for 60 minutes.
Yeah,
but if they can, if you can let.
What happens if TCU gets a few big plays early and you think Michigan gets rattled?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because I do think Michigan can. If it's early enough and there's enough time left in the game, that's why I say I think it really depends on how they go into halftime, what that game is like, because they're going to have a lot of confidence that they've curb stomped everybody in the second half. So Michigan's going to still have confidence, but I think that's got to be the way TCU approaches this. Is they've got to come out and throw some haymakers right out of the gate, because you want to try to get that game in JJ McCarthy's hands. Where he's got to throw the ball to keep them in it. A lot like kind of the end of the Illinois game. Those are the kind of situations I think you want to see. You don't want Michigan running the ball 45 times on you. That's lights out.
Yeah, and what could happen, and I don't want to say this and accidentally will it into existence, but if Donovan Edwards got hurt, then you would see the end of that Illinois game kind of coming true from an offense perspective for Michigan. And it wasn't pretty.
No, they were very lucky that they didn't. They were very lucky to get out of that without a loss.
Very true.
That was a great end. I was watching that at a bar. It was so good.
Yeah, I mean both of those teams have won some close games and won some big games. It's really interesting. And then you've got Georgia that I don't know has really been tested, and you got Ohio State that's coming off an absolutely gut-wrenching, embarrassing loss to their rival. There's so many storylines, and both games are very, very different, but they're interesting nonetheless, right? And all four teams kind of have some kind of, I don't know, just cool angles to them. And the fact that you've got that slugfest for the nightcap, that is the game that I think everybody kind of thought we'd get at the beginning of the season or wanted to get. And then that's a semifinal. So both of those teams could potentially just beat the crap out of each other. And so whoever, comes out of that's either going to have a ton of confidence and a bunch of juice, or they're going to be, hammered with a bunch of body blows going up against likely Michigan in the championship game. So it's great. I can't wait. It's going to be such a good day of football tomorrow.
It is. And, we were kind of talking about the big plays there for a second. And I know the Buckeyes are a little susceptible to that. And they even let Michigan get away with like 5. Like, how big is that as a concern? I mean, as far as, because if it only happened once, guy misses a tackle and a guy goes for a touchdown, you can say that's a fluke. But if it happens 5 times, then it's kind of like, is that John Brown 2.0?
No, I think it's a little bit of a combination
like
of
Antoine
both.
said earlier.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a little bit of a combination of both. I mean, there are some things we've seen all season long where Ohio State corners in particular had given up plays one-on-one. But as I think you had mentioned in that last show, Nate, it was really the safeties in the Michigan game that had the problems. Cam Brown missed one tackle on the outside. That's a fluky play. The other ones were just weird plays where, I really don't know that you could have a second half go any worse than the Michigan game went for Ohio State. And I do chalk some of that up to just like, it was just a weird stuff. But, the two run plays at the end, I think they were just gassed. They were just done. And they had a couple misfits and good on Michigan for taking advantage of it. But, I don't think those are necessarily like a systematic or symptomatic problem, something, symptomatic of something bigger, because we didn't see that all year. We did see you're going to make plays on defenses, especially if you're going to put your guys in one-on-one coverage. I mean, hell, even Georgia gives up plays in one-on-one situations. So even the best defenses give up plays. But, they better have gotten it figured out. They better have at least addressed those particular problems and breakdowns and have fixed those, because Georgia's going to stress them. Right? Georgia's going to hit a couple big plays. You just see it. I mean, when you got guys like Brock Bowers, they've got speed on the outside too. There are going to be some weird plays like that. There's going to be at least one big play that they'll give up in this game. They just have to get a couple in return. And that's where I thought in the Michigan game, where they did not take enough advantage. They hit the one big one to Marvin Harrison, but then they really didn't go after him the way, as aggressively in the second half. And they can't do that in this game.
Hey, Matt and Brian, I'll go to Matt on this one. Mary Hamby is asking, sort of made a good comment. It says that the Buckeyes, they do have something to lose as well as reputation. Kind of a good point. What happens if the Buckeyes lose after this? Well, I guess it depends on how they lose. Yeah. But what's the shitstorm going to look like for poor Ryan Day after this if another big game goes down?
You have a bad loss to Michigan, then you have, recruiting that did not end well. It's still overall pretty good, the recruiting that they got, but didn't end well. And then, you're going into this game, and if you get blown out, it's just a complete disaster. And, God, I don't even want to think about what the offseason would be. And I think the other problem is if you do get blown out, you have a much higher likelihood that people that would have stayed if you did well, like, might be a little fickle and go in the portal and just, see what they can get. Whereas if, you at least have a competitive game, then they're not even going to think about something like that. But, leave it to you to always be, throwing out the worst case scenarios here. I think, I'm for I don't know. I think it's going to be very similar to the 2014 game with Bama, and I think we're going to get 40, maybe 42. I think they're going to get maybe 35 or something. I think it's going to be very. And then as far as Michigan, I don't understand why Michigan is only a touchdown favorite over TCU. I just don't see how. I don't see. I mean, unless Michigan completely forgets how to play defense. I mean, their secondary is really good, and I just don't see TCU making that many plays. So, I think that is the only thing that they have as their weakness right now. Really, is they don't have running back. So, reason that I could see them, losing that game. If he's healthy, then they win, in my opinion. And I think they're going to win by at least 10 to 14 points. I think it's going to be a lot bigger than the spread is right now.
Yeah, I tend to not worry so much about like what the roster is going to react to one game. I think that's overrated, even with recruiting and all that. But I do think if they get embarrassed and guys haven't played, then they're not going to stick around. So why would they? But that's I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I really do. I love where the mentality of this team right now, and I think they've got the talent to stack up against Georgia. So I think they've got a decent shot at actually winning this game. And the one that would worry me a little bit more is if they beat Georgia and then lost to Michigan. Okay. Like that, just from the mentality of the program, that would be really problematic. But I tend to think if they come out of this and beat Georgia, they're going to be on a different level going into that game.
That's you keeping your head
confidence level, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can't wait to see it, but I tend to think I think they're going to have a good showing one way or the other, because no matter what, it's going to be the best team that Georgia has faced. And there's no reason to think like they're not going to go out and get embarrassed like Oregon did. They're not. They're better than that. They're better than LSU. They're better than Tennessee. They just have to play a clean game. And I'm not saying that that's enough to necessarily win. I mean, I think CJ's got to play one of, if not his best game as a collegiate, but they have the opportunity to do it. So I'm confident. I can't wait.
My biggest concern is actually not Georgia. The false starts like or side in the red zone, or the coach taking almost all the time on the clock to play in, so you're rushing penalty because of that. It's always stupid penalties and false starts and home field drive, and we're horrible at that all year about being disciplined. And I'm more worried about that than anything else.
Yeah, it's funny. Antoine says if Michigan and Ohio State played and Michigan beat them, Michigan fans get to talk shit forever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. The redemption is the reverse. It would just be unbelievable.
I don't even want to be in that position, to be honest. I think it would be great leading up and just the idea of it, the historical nature of it. But you're right. I think Ohio State, they beat Georgia. They're going to be on a whole new high of confidence level. I mean, my gosh, can you imagine how they'll feel after coming out of that? And it's hard to beat a team twice. The Buckeyes would absolutely have an advantage. I mean, don't you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think it would. I mean, we know what we did that didn't work, and we just had to be more aggressive, especially in the first half when things are working well for you. You have to be able to be scoring touchdowns, and I think the offense hurt us in that game more than the defense did. Everyone always talks about those 5 plays we gave up, but you're doing well in the first half, and you're getting tons of yards. If you're punching those in for touchdowns, Michigan's not even going to be getting into it. I mean, we would have been up by probably 2 or 3 touchdowns if we were efficient in the red zone like we should have been.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? If Michigan doesn't blitz deep safeties on that play to Marv, Ohio State might only score 1 touchdown in that game, because the only other touchdown Ohio State scored in that game was on the very first drive. And then the other touchdown was the one to Marv. And if Michigan doesn't blitz that safety, which I don't think they did ever again, Ohio State might score like 1 touchdown in that game. So, yeah, you're right. That was a huge showing, non-showing, to only score 23 points.
Yeah.
So no doubt about it. I mean, and I think they actually, I'm not gonna say dominated it, but I thought that they had the advantage for large chunks of that game. Large chunks. They just didn't score enough. And that's kind of the MO of these games when you see Ryan Day teams lose. And it doesn't happen a lot, but a lot of it comes down to not scoring enough points when you have opportunities in the red zone. And that is a huge, huge deal here. We need touchdowns. We've got to play. And like Matt said I've been saying the same thing for 2 weeks, Matt, same exact deal. Like, I just don't want to see these same stupid mental mistakes. When you're already, in tight games, you can't be the team that gets false starts on, third and 2 and, personal fouls, the whole deal. Yeah. you got to have your composure. And for whatever reason, this team all year has had problems with it.
Hey, Matt, there's one question directed right at you. Here's from Andrew. It says, Matt, if Michigan beats Ohio State for a third straight time, what is Ryan Day's status as a coach?
Well, that would be a complete disaster, although I still don't count it as 3 in a row because you forfeited one of those games.
Well, since 2001, 2021. That's assuming we win the national championship against Ohio State. That's the question.
You know, the funny or that happened, if you guys played us that year, we would have won by 50 and Harbaugh would have likely been fired. And I'm not even joking. It's just unbelievable how differently things turned out because of the COVID duck. I mean, it's just
the COVID.
Well, that and bringing in half the defensive, or half the coaching staff of the Ravens being like a farm system for Ravens coaches certainly helped them a ton as well. And I'm not even saying that to be crappy about it. I applaud them for that. So
pretty awesome. Yeah. So let's get to predictions. I'm kind of ready. It's tomorrow. It's less than 24 hours. What do you guys say? Matt, I want to start with you on a prediction for Ohio for both games. Let's start with Michigan first. Let's hear your background, what you think is going to happen and score.
I do think that TCU could probably hit some big plays on them because I don't think they're going to be used to the speed. I don't know if TCU is going to come out and hit them early or not, but I do know that they're going to get some big plays, and Duggan's going to make a couple of good drives. But I don't see them scoring more than like 21 on Michigan, and I think I don't know what the over under is supposed to be, but I would guess Michigan somewhere around 30. I'm thinking something like 30-21 maybe, or maybe even 32-21. And then I think with I think that they generally don't blow people out, so I don't think Michigan's going to get more than 30 to 35. And I think with Ohio State, I think we're probably like 42-35, something like that. And I just think that one of the main reasons we've been struggling the last half of the season is we've had so many. I don't know for sure if Mike Hall and Tyleik Williams have been injured or if they just haven't been. But those guys.
Who's ringing?
I don't know. Those guys need to be playing starter snaps, and if they're going to be playing a lot, and Matt Jones is helping can step up. They've had a lot of time to heal. Mayan Williams hopefully will be healthy enough. And even if he isn't, we have enough running back depth that we should be fine. See, whether we're running our sixth string running back, it doesn't seem to matter. Our running game is good. We just need to stick with it. And I don't think that the Georgia secondary is it's not. I mean, they're not terrible, obviously, but they've definitely been exploited a decent amount. And I think that against us, I think we should definitely be able to put up some big plays against them. And I think. I'm thinking that our defense, to win this game, I think our defense is also going to have to make a couple of plays. I think we're going to have to get some interceptions, and like I said before, they're prone. They do fumble a lot, so we need to make sure we, JTT can get some, if you can do half of what he did against Penn State, and then we can get a couple big sacks. Eichenberg needs to step up. He's been a monster most of the year, and Steel Chambers has been good, on blitzes as well. I think just get some pressure on those guys and really, make it so I'm thinking that I think we're gonna hit them early, and I think it's gonna be basically just holding on late, and I think that we're gonna be, they're probably gonna come back late in the game. We'll probably be up a couple scores, and I think they're gonna come back and get it within a touchdown or so. But I think ultimately we hold them at the end, and I think we're gonna win by a touchdown.
Wow. Okay. That doesn't surprise me that you think that. So what's going to be the final score, you think? I think you may have said that, but I missed it.
Yeah, something like 42-35. And then I think with Michigan, like 30-21 or something.
Interesting. Okay. Calling for a win for the Buckeyes. Hey, I don't blame you. So as far as the Michigan, so I'll start with Ohio State and Georgia. I'm higher on the Buckeyes beating them than I was yesterday. Just thinking about it, going over some stats, looking at like who Georgia's played. I'm still teetering on Georgia winning the game overall. I think that the Buckeyes, while improved on defense, they really only have a couple of spot players that are really good on defense and on offense. Honestly, I think both teams are probably down compared to what they normally are, but I think it's not going to be a super high scoring game. I'm picking Georgia to win probably by about a touchdown. So mine is 42-27.
Can you let Brian back in? He says he's back.
Oh yeah. We lost Brian there.
Yeah, sorry fellas. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, exactly. That happens. But
don't podcast on your phone.
Matt, I don't know if you heard Matt. Matt said that he thinks Ohio State's going to lose by about at least 4 touchdowns. Isn't that what you said, Matt?
Something like that. No.
Something like that. I heard some kind of score in the 40s. Did you pick Ohio State to win, Matt?
Yeah, it's 42-35.
That's a lot of points.
35. That is a lot of points.
A lot of points, man.
Yeah,
I think these games tend to be lower scoring than you think they're going to be. Yeah, they tend to go under.
I was going to say 35-27 Georgia is what I'm picking.
Yeah.
And
that's fun. That's funny, Nate, because I was very much in line with that. But as we've gotten closer to the game, my confidence level's higher. And I actually like Ohio State to win this game, but it's 34-30. So it was the same. I had the same thing. It's like if Ohio State doesn't get over 30, they lose. So, and even with, Ohio State's defense being better, I just don't think they're going to be able to completely stop Georgia's offense. Georgia's too diverse on offense. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting, man. I think it should be a fairly close game. That's what I'm mainly looking at there. And I tend to agree. I think Michigan's just going to be too much for TCU, and they should beat them by 10. So, whatever you want to call it, 35-20-25.
Yeah, 35-17 is what I'm going for Michigan. I mean, that's what I feel like it should be. I don't know if it'll end up that way. That's just the way I sort of feel like it should be. And that I think it'll be pretty close to that. But the reason I'm not picking the Buckeyes is solely because of CJ Stroud. I've lost confidence in that dude. I think that they're just not going to let him do what he wants to do. And I don't think they're at show me mode now. Mm-hmm. Buckeyes are in show me mode. After being at home, losing to Michigan the way they did, not being able to score at home, no weather issues, 55 degrees and sunny in Columbus that day. I'm in show me mode, basically.
Well, my main counter to that, Nate, would be we had a lot of injuries, like a lot of positions. Mayan hurt, our tight ends hurt, our offensive lineman didn't play. So we're gonna, have all those guys healthy, allegedly, for the game tomorrow. So, that's been one of the big problems of the second half of the year. Just, our guys, the depth that we had behind those guys was not enough.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of plays into my decision too, is because there's no Travion Henderson. There's no one at the running back position to really take the top off, and so that's kind of the question. CJ Stroud, there's no one for him to even no one to back him up from the running back position to really just make huge plays that they would need in this game. So I do think it's going to be closer though, because I don't think Georgia is as good as advertised. So they could win. I mean, the Buckeyes have the talent to win. I just don't think they will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it totally does. And I think all your comments or criticisms are well warranted. We have not seen. We're still going on potential, right? We're saying if Ohio State wins this game, they have the potential to beat Georgia, no question about it. They haven't necessarily demonstrated that consistently all year long. They've had spurts of it. I mean, I think they've definitely answered the bell at times. I think the second half against Penn State shows they can beat a quality team in a hostile environment when they absolutely have to. I think they were right on the cusp of answering Michigan in that game. They just came up just a little bit short. And I agree. It's show me for CJ Stroud. It's show me for Ryan Day. It's show me for this defense and Jim Knowles. And I can't wait. I mean, part of that's the exciting part of it. And the fact that they are the underdog, and deservedly so, it should take a little bit of that pressure off of them, because I think they played that last game against Michigan so tight. And they should, if they come out loose and they play clean, it's going to be a hell of a fun game to watch. It really is, because they've recruited on the same level as Georgia. They've developed on the same level as Georgia. Certainly there are individual matchups that favor Georgia over Ohio State, but I think Ohio State has some matchups that favor them over Georgia. So it's going to be an awesome game. It really should be an awesome football game to watch, and should set up either way for, it's clearly what should be on paper anyway, the harder of the semifinals. So, you're getting a really, really good battle tested team coming in there to play what should be Michigan in the championship game. So can't ask for much more than that.
So true or false question. Every single time that Marvin Harrison Jr. has got single coverage, doesn't matter if it's Kayla Ringo, whoever, CJ Stroud should throw that ball up.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Very true. Very true.
Boy, we're going to say, if he does that, I think they got a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Marvin Harrison's got to boss this game. He just got to boss this game.
He does.
He's got to go off, and I think he can. I mean, when you look at the better receivers that have gone up against Georgia this year, and in the past, they've put up numbers. And there's no reason to think that they're going to shut down Marvin Harrison Jr. And certainly this receiving core across the board is not as good as they were last year, but they're still very talented and they're capable of doing some things. And then you got a wild card in Xavier Johnson, and you could get Dallin Hayden in this game. There could be some things, some guys that you haven't necessarily seen a lot out of, who could make some plays in this game. But I think it's going to be the tried and true guys, but yeah, it comes down to CJ Stroud. Like, how is he going to play in this game, and is he going to look like top of the NFL type draft pick in this game? If he does, Ohio State's got a shot. If he doesn't, they don't.
And to the other side of that, with the Michigan game, I feel like for Michigan, they might be peaking at the right time. Just some of the things that they're doing in the passing game, I just feel like that it's connecting. Maybe there's something clicking. And I know we like to talk about the 2014 Buckeye team. Something clicked with the Buckeyes. And maybe in the Wisconsin game or right at the end of the Michigan game. And like something started clicking there, all coming together. And I feel like the Michigan could be doing that right now. That's my hope.
Well, their passing game, they have to have more confidence coming out of the Ohio State game, because they hadn't done that all year long. Right. And it's not that J.J. McCarthy hadn't put balls out there for his guys. Those guys hadn't made the plays, and they all made plays against Ohio State. So they should be confident, and they to have a guy back there at quarterback who is not afraid of the moment, who that entire team has experience. I think that, you hit it on the head earlier in the week, Nate, when you said that this team was just happy to be there. It seemed like they were just happy to be there last year. They're actually there to do some damage this year. And that experience is critical. And they've got a guy back there under center who, has some confidence, has some experience now, and is playing at a high level. And they're a dangerous team. Like, Michigan could legitimately win this whole thing. It would not shock me. It would not shock me in the least. So, if I'm a Michigan fan, I feel pretty good about, where you're situated, because you should get through this first semifinal. unless you completely stub your toe. And if you do that, you've got a legitimate shot to win the whole thing.
Well, to be honest, I really want Georgia. I remember, Brian, this was years ago when Michigan wasn't even in these talks, but I remember Ohio State was doing good with might have been 2014. Like maybe even after that, you just kept saying, I want Bama. Like, I want Bama. Like, that's who you wanted.
For sure.
And that's kind of how I feel right now about Georgia. It's like, I want the Bulldogs because we lost to them badly. I want a rematch. I feel like we've leveled up a bit and they've come down a bit. I feel like Michigan has a shot.
No doubt. This is definitely a year for it. And, the Big Ten's got a legit shot at winning a national championship. They got two really good teams in it, and could even have two teams in the final. So it's gonna be fun, fellas. I got to roll out, guys. I wish I could stay on longer, but I got to jump off. It's always fun.
Oh wait,
go blue.
I know, buddy. See ya.
Yeah, Matt. I'll tell you what. We'll wrap this up. I think that if we come back, okay, there's tomorrow. If Ohio State beats Georgia and Michigan beats TCU, we're jumping on here because I'm gonna need a reason. I need a way to vent if that happens. I'm gonna have to be talked off a cliff if that happens. If it's Michigan versus Ohio State tomorrow at midnight, we're jumping on here.
Definitely.
I'm gonna wake you up. I'm gonna call your wife. I'm gonna tell her to wake you up, and we're jumping on here.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm so pumped. I just think that the SEC's been so overrated all year. Just such a down year. And, not that Georgia's bad. Obviously, they're a good team. They're nowhere near as talented as they were last year. And, Ohio State, when they're healthy, they're a really, really good team.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And, Matt, talk to you soon. Go blue.
Bucks.
All right. Take care.
All right.